John, what do you love about movies?
The thing I really like about movies is they can be very transcendent where you forget who you are and where you are. You can get lost in a movie. It's why I wanted to become a filmmaker, because I would, for 90 minutes or whatever the time was, I would just forget where I was and just get lost, either lost in space with Star Wars, or even Henry and the Hendersons, which is this ridiculous family movie about how they adopt Bigfoot. And I remember watching that movie and completely forgetting where I was. And then when the credits came up, I just came back into my body, into the room, and I was like, wow, that was incredible. And I think that's the most magical thing about movies. You're in a dark room in the theater or at home, and when you watch, you can just disappear in it. It's magical. I don't know. That's like really the only reason why I wanted to do it. I wanted to create something. I wanted to be able to remanufacture that in some way of all the other experiences I had when I was young.
Right, yeah, I forgot about Harry and the Hendersons. I remember that movie.
I forgot about Harry and the Hendersons until now. I'm just now remembering that, but I just remembered completely forgetting where I was, just because I got wrapped up in the story. Like, you know, I can't tell you back what the story of Henry and the Hendersons were. I just remember, like, the stakes were so high for that family and for Bigfoot to get found out, I guess. I think that's what the story was. But I was like really wrapped up in it. You know, the same thing for Star Wars and even Indiana Jones when I was a kid. And just even in those movies, just really being wrapped up in what they were doing, you know. I cared a lot about those specific characters in those films.
Well, I know off camera we talked about you grew up in a small town.
Yeah.
Did they have a Cineplex there?
They did.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Oh, well, actually, yeah, they did. It was an on again, off again movie theater. For reasons I don't know, because I did grow up in a small town. But I grew up in Central California. The next town over was Stockton, and they had a Cineplex. And so I would just drive to Stockton and watch movies there, or we would go to Sacramento and watch movies there as well. It would be a trip.
Sure.
But you know, later on, there was a theater that opened up down the street from where I lived, and I remember during the summer walking down the street to go see Independence Day, Jurassic Park, those summer blockbusters, which I ate up with a wooden spoon. I couldn't get enough of those. And I would even just go back and, you know, watch them two or three times. Especially when I was young, I would just, you know, if I didn't have any money and my parents wouldn't lend me any more money to go watch movies, I would just go knock on the neighbor's door and see if I could mow his lawn. And then I'd get paid, and then I just walk to the theater and go watch Independence Day again. I did that a lot. I did that for years growing up.
That's really cool. So you were entrepreneurial, it sounds like.
I guess. I just really liked watching movies. That was it.
Right, and you mentioned that with like sort of seeing Harry and the Hendersons or Star Wars, you wanted to recreate that. When did you realize that you wanted to recreate that as an actual job, not just for something you wanted to do creatively?
I can't remember specifically when I wanted to be a filmmaker. Early on, I learned, you know, with these films that I had watched that I loved, with Star Wars and George Lucas and Indiana Jones and Steven Spielberg and even William Wyler and Ben-Hur, I just learned because you saw their names come up at the end of the movie and you're just like, oh, who are these people? These people made the movie. And I remember going to the library and venturing out into the adult section of the library which was like, it was just huge. It was just like this huge warehouse of books, which, you know, the Lodi library must have been small, but as a kid, it just seemed huge. And I stumbled along the film section and I found these books that had, you know, George Lucas and Spielberg and William Wyler on them. And I saw them making the movies that I watched, you know, just earlier, and, you know, started to read those and learning about, you know, the process of what filmmaking was, to how, whatever I could figure out as a child just from reading those books or looking at the photos. And around that time, you know, I then started experimenting myself. I made a lot of movies when I was a kid. I'd borrow video cameras and try to emulate the same thing, making short films and things like that. And so it was just a natural, I think just because of my curiosity as a child, it just came natural that that's just what I always wanted to do. I just wanted to make films, and so I just kept doing it. When I was in high school and looking at colleges, I wanted, because I knew from those books, I knew George Lucas went to USC, and you know, these other filmmakers were from Los Angeles. I just wanted to go down to Los Angeles, go to school, go to film school there, and be a filmmaker, and then become a filmmaker and do that as a job. So yeah, but to not answer your question, I can't remember the exact moment when that was. It was just very early on, as a kid.
And just as a side note, you just jogged my memory. I remember seeing articles about Bigfoot and sort of Sasquatch or Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Was it in sort of the Central California area? I remember being scared that somehow it was going to make it down to the Bay Area. Wasn't that part of where these alleged sightings were?
It could have been. I cannot remember that at all. Growing up, my dad had a cabin in Bear Valley, which is in Central California. And so when I was a kid, I would sit in his lap and he would read stories. He would read books to me, or he would like tell me stories about living in the Great Depression or World War II, because my dad fought in World War II. And I had a very old father. I came late in the family. I was like an accident child, or unplanned pregnancy. And I just remember being in the cabin, my dad would mess with me and he would say, oh, Bigfoot was just looking in the window in the cabin. It would be at night. And I took him seriously. I thought, you know, so at a very young age, I always thought Bigfoot was real, because Bigfoot was real in my mind. And so then later watching Harry and the Hendersons, it just felt really real to me.
That was a nice Bigfoot, though.
It was a very nice Bigfoot. And in a way, I thought to myself, you know, if Bigfoot is outside the cabin looking in the window, he's not smashing the window, he's not coming inside. So maybe Bigfoot is like me, he's just curious about what's going on in here, you know. It's such a random thing to think about with Bigfoot, but it's, you know, stories and cinema, it is make-believe, you know. It's like something that's fantastical, if that's a word, that you want to be real, but it feels real, and you can create that illusion to be real and have that experience and, you know, translate that experience to an audience for entertainment value. I mean, I think all of us as people, we want to experience some sort of magical thing. When I say magical, like something that's not normal in our day-to-day life. You know, I think that's why people went to the circus back in the day. You know, they're like, oh, this guy balances on an elephant and jumps on a trampoline up to, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I can't remember ever going to the circus, but just from what I've seen on TV. But, you know, there's like all sorts of incredible acrobatic acts that people do that, you know, the guy working on the farm or the doctor or the mechanic, you know, that's just not there every day. So having that sort of like entertainment experience, it's a novel experience, but it's like we like, you know, we enjoy those things. You know, everybody's making a big deal about Tom Cruise hanging from an airplane again, because not everybody, I mean, I don't hang from an airplane. I know you don't. I don't know anybody else who does. So you can go buy a ticket and watch Tom Cruise do it.
Right.
And if they did their job right, I haven't seen the movie, I'm sure it's a great movie. You care about what's happening, which makes the experience even better as a moviegoer to watch, because you actually care if Tom Cruise, you know, does the thing he's trying to do in the movie.
Right.
Man,
That's great. I love it. I love
over
it.
The place.
We got.
Are we following along?
Yeah. No. Forgive me. You jogged my memory of seeing some kind of news footage about Bigfoot, and I hadn't thought about that in a little bit. And so thank you for that, because it did feel very real. And you're right that we didn't know, was it a sort of this sort of sensationalist sort of fictional character, or was there this crazy animal creature that is going around living in the woods?
So. It's a legend that's been like passed down forever, I think. And it's not just in California. I know up in Washington. I have a script I'm writing right now with a friend of mine, and it is a Bigfoot movie. But it's more of a horror thriller type movie. It's not a Henry and the Henderson fun movie. It's fun, but it's fun as in barbarian is fun. You know, it's a dark, twisted movie.
You're a writer, director, producer, and editor. Which one is the most difficult?
They're all difficult. They're all very difficult, and they all have their own facets of difficulty. Producing is always difficult because there is a lot of, you know, producing is just like managing people, managing finances, raising money. I hate doing it. I hate raising money. It's the worst part of filmmaking, is just trying to convince people to invest in you to make your movie. It's very hard. And I know other people, it's really easy for them to do that. So I think it all is based on your skill set. Directing, I love directing, but it's very challenging because it's like running a marathon. You know, if you're shooting for 18 days, 20 days, which is not a lot of time if you're making a movie, you need way more than that. But for me, all the low budget films that I've done, it's been like 17 days or 19 days or 20 days. And you have to have endurance, and you need to be really focused on what you're trying to do as a filmmaker, but then also you can't be so set in your ways. You got to be able to be fluid like water, because everything that you plan to do isn't gonna work, and you have to come up with things on the fly. I mean, just like the day as you're driving or walking to set, they're like, oh, by the way, you know that house that you were gonna shoot in today? Yes, it's not there anymore. Okay. And you only have Bill today. You know, Bill is the actor. So you have to think on your feet. That always happens, and so that's very challenging as a director. As a writer, I think it's very challenging because the most difficult part about writing is it's easy for you to get in your own way, because when you're writing, anything is possible. When you're either with your notepad or in front of your computer, you can just do whatever it is that you want to do. There's like no budget, there's no time limit, there's nothing. It's just a blank page, and you can put anything on it that you want, or anything can come to you and you can put it on there. And then after you spend so much time writing, then you have that voice, that witch in your head that's going to question the things that you're doing. And so then you writing, the difficult part about that is battling your witch of saying like, no one's going to like this isn't good, da 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 da. You know, that's the most challenging thing about writing, I feel like, because you eventually have to just decide like, okay, I'm going to put this out, have other people read it, get the feedback, pitch it, you know, whatever it may be. That's a very challenging aspect. And then editing, the most difficult part about editing is seeing the mistakes that you made on set, what you should have done. For me, I'm very fortunate. I have cut most of the films that I've made. I've worked with other editors in the past on other projects, but you know, in terms for like Don't Tell Larry and Where the Wind Blows, I cut both of those films myself. I went on to set knowing, or not knowing, but having a good idea of maybe how I would cut the movie together. And so when you sit there and you're done shooting and you start cutting the film together, you're seeing your mistakes that you're trying to fix in the edit. So it's a very humbling experience as an editor. That's very challenging, just to see how much of a filmmaker you need to grow. Like, you know, every time I edit a movie, I feel like I'm not a very good filmmaker. There's a lot of things I let fall through the cracks. And so it's you definitely learn a lot when you're editing about yourself, and hopefully if you take notes and you think about it, you get better and better and better as you keep doing it.
And sometimes interesting stuff can come from something that's not planned.
Well, it's a lot. I mean, when you go from writing to producing to directing to editing, I mean, they're completely different fields, and it's very challenging to navigate all those. But you know, that's why I always think of it all together as just, it's being a filmmaker who edits. And I didn't come up with that. There's this guy on YouTube called This Guy Edits. His name's Sven. I don't know him, but I love his channel, and his thing is oh, I'm a filmmaker who edits. Like, he makes movies as well, and it's like, yeah, I've adopted that, where I am a filmmaker who edits. Filmmaking is, it's holistic. There's so many different things, and there are so many specialized people in filmmaking, where there's just editors, just writers, just actors, you know, all this stuff. And there's a reason why, because when you have a set, or when you're putting something together, a show, a movie, whatever, it does take a lot of people to put that together, and you can't do it on your own. You can't. So that's why I think it's very challenging to do all of those disciplines. However, when you have an idea of like what a movie is, or you get inspired by something that you want to see, then like the writing aspect becomes easy, because you get inspired by something you want to see on screen. The producing aspect, you know what you're trying to find or look for or try to convince people to do. You're on set directing, you know where you want the actors to be, you know where the camera is supposed to go, you know what color the shirt is supposed to be, you have an idea what time of day it is, if it's low, if it's morning or afternoon, if the camera's low, high, you need a horse, you don't need the horse, it's a close-up, no, it's a wide. You have all this stuff in your head, and you know exactly how it's going to be put together. They're just steps through time. You are accomplishing different things for this like end result. And sometimes you're lucky enough you can have that clear of a vision, but most of the time you're just discovering it as you go along. It's like you have these little things of inspiration, and then you just connect them. You're trying to connect them together as you're moving along.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because you're kind of going off in this like physics world a little bit. And I know you have a quote from your LinkedIn regarding Stephen Hawking: "Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change."
Oh yeah, I love that quote.
How does that fit in on set?
Well, because you always have to change. If you are always set in your ways of like, this has to be like this has to be like that. And there are people, there are times when you do have to do that, where something has to be a specific way, because you know the film is going to break apart if you don't get that certain thing. But a lot of times, filmmaking is the practice of things not going, nothing goes right on set. It just never does. I have never been on any set where you're like, wow, things are working great here. I've never seen that. And I've worked on, I've worked on a big budget TV show where there were so many people that you would think everything should go right, and nothing would go right.
Right.
And it's just the nature of it. It's just organized chaos. And so you got to be able to, if not everything is perfect and you're going to fall apart, you're not going to be able to finish and get your day. And so I do like that quote from Stephen Hawking, because I do feel like you being able to change, because it's about a goal. You have this goal that you're trying to achieve, and you think you're going to go it this way, but then a roadblock happens, and then it takes intelligence to go around it and still hit the goal, whether you're going over it, digging a hole underneath it, going around it. In filmmaking, you're just doing that every setup. Camera setup at a time of how that's going to go. So I love that.
If we go back to the Stephen Hawking quote of intelligence is the ability to adapt to change,
Yeah.
how is this relevant now in
filmmaking?
Mm-hmm. Not to date the interview, but
it's always relevant, because life is about change. Story is about change. Character is about change. You have an interesting movie if your character is changing. If your character is afraid of heights in the beginning of your movie, and then at the end of it, they're now a 747 pilot, that's change. Life is about change. It's about the universe. Seasons change. The levels of the ocean change based on where the moon is as we fly around the sun, I believe. I'm just talking about the moon cycles and the level of the oceans rise and fall.
Sure. And our moods possibly too. There's been studies.
Oh, I believe that for sure, bro, for sure. It's and a lot of people don't like to change. They don't. Some people hate change, and I personally too. I don't like change. It's a challenge in my life. I like to do. What do you call it when you like to do the same thing over and over again? What do you call that?
Not monotonous or no?
Routine.
Oh, thank you.
Routine.
Thank you.
I do like a routine.
The voice of reason.
Yeah, but I'm very much a routine type of person. The structure of my life helps me stay sane, I guess, or I feel comfortable. That's like why anybody does it. And so that's why we don't like to change, because we like to stay comfortable, but change is inevitable, change happens, and us being able to accept it and alchemize it into gold in some way is the mindset you should have in your life, and then also in your ability to in filmmaking and storytelling. You're always given the opportunity to turn something into gold. You're an alchemist. Whatever it is, you don't have the thing that you asked for, the thing burned down, You know, the person is actually 8 inches taller than what you thought they were going to be, and when you cast the two people, they now both are the same height, which was not the plan. So you have to alchemize that and still create gold. You've got to still turn that into gold in some way, and you can do it. You can absolutely do it. That's the one thing about being an independent filmmaker is you're wearing more hats, and now, you know, part of making a movie is just marketing. You have to think about the marketing, and like for Don't Tell Larry and for Where the Wind Blows, you know, it's just there's a YouTube page, there's an Instagram page, and I'm literally making reels and posts and learning all the things about SEO and making trending titles so you can get awareness out about your movie using tools like YouTube. And that's what they are. They're tools. I think now that you have the opportunity to have access to so many people, as an independent filmmaker, you now have to learn how to access them. Because the studio's not going to do it for you. You know, everybody has their own experience or entry point in how they experience stories, and I think a lot of people have it with film and television, or they have it with comic books, or they have it with reading. And for me, I'm thankful because, you know, my dad would just always tell stories. He would tell stories to people. He could definitely hold the attention of a room of like 3 people to 100 people, telling stories, life stories, experiences, things like that. And so I just grew up observing and watching him, how he would tell stories and how I would hear the same stories over and over again. And then I would notice how things would change. Like stories from World War II, it seemed like over time, him and this Nazi soldier, they keep getting closer and closer and closer and closer and closer in the story. But it's like every time he would tell the story, it's just the people who would listen would lean in and lean in and lean in and lean in. Even if you know, these two, him and the other guy would get closer and closer and closer, the point of the story would still stay the same.
Right.
And I feel like when you're writing or when you're filming, and then most importantly, when you are editing, you're creating an experience for somebody else to enjoy. And I know there's a lot of times as a filmmaker, you want to tell yourself, you want things to be authentic. You want things to feel authentic, like it needs to be real or it needs to feel real, like the emotions need to be real. And it's all true. I personally feel like they need to look like they are real, because it's all a lie, how you're putting things together, and it's communicating a point of whatever that story is, whatever maybe the theme is, or even for what the whole, as a whole, what the movie is, whatever the goal is and the conflict and whatever your character is working very hard to achieve. It's still an illusion that you're putting together for someone to experience. And so for me, I feel like it's supposed to touch, like, you know, it's almost like painting. It's like you can, even the artists the incredible artists who paint and things look photoreal, it's incredible, like, oh, that looks photoreal, but it still isn't. It's emulating what reality looks like, but you enjoy it more because it almost looks photoreal. Like, Chuck Close, he's an artist who can do almost like photoreal painting, and he makes these little shapes, and when you look at them from a distance, they look photoreal, like a photograph almost. If you haven't seen any Chuck Close's paintings, you should definitely check them out. And that's what makes it enjoyable. But real life is boring. If I'm trying to like be entertained, I'm not going to go sit down and watch somebody else live their life. I want it to be manufactured in a way for me to enjoy. And so it's like a really roundabout way of explaining, I think, what it is that you do as a storyteller. Doesn't matter if you're a writer or a filmmaker or even an actor. I mean, even an actor has to call on past experiences to create, depending on what type of actor they are, but if they're calling up an emotional experience to take that and plug it into a scene to have a similar, to lie, so you, as an audience, believe that they're crying or they're angry about what's happening in the scene, but they're just calling up something that happened in their childhood to be believable. You know, that should tell you right there that everything that you're doing is manufactured. And so just understanding that, I think you can enjoy the process of creating something and not getting hung up on everything having to be so real. Sorry, that didn't really conclude well, but
no, it informs the fact that you watched your dad sort of hold court and this like sort of, he was very great at telling stories, and whether they sort of changed here and there, but you know, I can see that in you as well, that you really do sort of hold the attention of the listener by telling stories, and I think it's been passed down, and it's an art. Not everybody can do it.
yeah, I agree. It is an art, but you can learn it. I feel like if you didn't grow up learning anything about storytelling, you're a human being. You can learn how to tell a story. I think it's in our DNA as people. You know, as cavemen, we told each other stories. You know, we have old stories like Gilgamesh or Noah in the Ark. And, you know, there's so many different civilizations across the world where they all have a Noah's Ark type story.
Sure.
There's things about us as people that deep down inside of us that we just gravitate towards these certain types of stories, which, you know, there's like a million documentaries and books about how Star Wars is like the hero of 1,000 faces. Right. You know, it's the story we keep retelling about ourselves. And so that's why I think if anybody is wanting to be a filmmaker, they don't have to be discouraged about not having any sort of background where they, you know, didn't grow up around on sets or people telling stories or whatever. Everybody's got a story within them. You have your own story that only you can tell, and you should tell it if you want to.
Sure. When it's the right time, maybe.
Sure.
In life, yeah. I feel like there's like a farmer's almanac or something, you know?
Oh, yeah. I used to read, my dad had, because my dad was a farmer, he always got the farmer's almanac. I mean, my dad made wine, he made sauerkraut, he dried fruit. I did all this stuff during the summer with him, and because he grew up on a farm, even though I grew up in town, he still had his green thumb, and we had a very large backyard, and half of it was a garden, and there was so many fruit trees back there, and so my dad had the almanac, and I remember like reading it, like, they know you're gonna get this much rain in the future? It seems crazy. And my dad, he just was like, well, I don't know, they seem to have figured it out. That's what he would say.
Is there a filmmaker's almanac?
Man, if there is, I want to read it. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything an equivalent to it? I don't know. There's some books on filmmaking that I absolutely love. For me, Judith Weston's Directing Actors book is like an almanac for me. I always reread it before going on to set and then writing down action verbs in my script to help actors. come up with action verbs to help elicit emotions that you're looking for on set. If you haven't read, if you're interested in directing, because 80% of directing is working with your actors, like blocking and doing adjustments, and so having action verbs, you definitely get a better result from giving an action verb than like an adjective.
Sorry, can you explain? Can
Or
you
a
give me
color.
one? Can you try that out?
Oh yeah, like it's like you guys have a scene and you're angry, but you're angry, but instead of being like, oh, can you be more angry or more mad, or can you yell louder, instead of things like that, you can give an adjustment like, I want you to knife him or agitate him.
Okay.
And then it allows to, from Judith Weston's mind, which I'm sure somebody could probably reiterate this better than me, but the thing is, it's being able to understand something physically in the scene allows you to materialize it better than just like an adjective. And listen, it's not like you use an action verb and all of a sudden you're going to magically get what you want, but you also start creating a language of how you're communicating with your actor, and then you're starting to, because a lot of times this always happens, you're like, oh, we're going to do all this rehearsal and we're going to figure out the character before we roll on day one, and then none of it happens and we're all there and we're rolling on day one and we're like, okay, let's figure out this character. Why don't you knife him? And they're like, no, that didn't feel right. No, that didn't feel right. I don't think this character is as angry as we think we did. There's a little bit of a disappointment. So what's something we could do that like could show disappointment, and then maybe coming up with an action verb for that. Most actors are like, what the heck are you talking about? But it's a process, and you're always figuring out, nobody is created equal, and so you're always coming up with your own way of how you communicate with all the actors anyways. There's not like one blanket way of how you work with an actor. It's just coming up with your own way to how you communicate with somebody. How you work with one actor isn't necessarily the same of how you work with another one or with a different actor. And so you kind of learn that, and you try to figure that out before you get on set, but that never, if you're lucky enough, maybe you do, but you really, real work happens on set when you're blocking and doing takes and things like that. And so over time, you really start to learn how you're going to work with that actor. And, good luck. If you got 5 actors on set, you got your hands, you're going to have your hands full if you really want to try to get something specific from everybody. But ultimately, you also want to be with people that you trust. Ideally, like, they're the experts in the character. They're bringing to the table of like who they think that character is. And so if you've casted well, you're just guiding, just shepherding along, like, this is the direction where we're going. This is the water,
As a director, what is your approach to building a scene?
Oh, well, when you're building a scene, you always want to think about the emotion of what is happening with the characters. So depending on what that is how you would build it. So depending on if it's suspense or, a lot, that's the first part of it. And then, blocking always dictates where you're going to put the camera. And so I always think about blocking first of like, this character is going to be here, this person's entering from here. What's the dynamic between the two which character has power over the other one, just with power dynamics perhaps, or and start thinking of it that way. And then, depending on where, if you're on location, you're not always going to have the luxury of building a set. I mean, if you get to build a set where the door and the window is exactly where it needs to be and everything for what you have in your mind, then you can really set a tone and an emotion that way as well for your movie. But if you're adapting to what you have, your blocking will dictate that. And so, but yeah, I mean, coming back to it, it's the the emotion of like what is happening in the scene, what's gonna reflect that, and you kind of build out from there.
What do you say to actors after you say cut?
Great job. Let's go again.
Okay.
It all depends. It all depends. What you say to an actor after you say cut, you always want to be encouraging. You always want to feel collaborative. And you also want to, collaborative is the big one. I think you always want to be encouraging afterwards. I think that's very important after you yell cut. Sometimes after you yell cut, you're lucky if you can get a word in, because usually there's 100 questions coming at you immediately after you say cut. So if you can get a word in, great, because you're going to have to answer a lot of questions. And even from actors, they're like, oh, was that more... Did I knife him the way you wanted me to knife him? Yeah, that was great. That was great. Yeah, I mean, it's all about collaboration. So you always want to be encouraging, and then you want to be real too. There's nothing wrong about being real. Like, that didn't work. Let's try something different. That's okay. We got enough time to do a bunch of different takes. Let's explore. Let's see what we need to do. A lot of times too, people are just like, oh, the light went off halfway through the take and you didn't even notice it. So thank God someone mentioned that, or there was like a bump in the camera, or the picture fell off the wall halfway through the performance or something like that. So,
do you think actors respect that though? If you are more middle of the road, so it's not super cheery and, oh wow, that's amazing, because then they feel like maybe you're blowing smoke a little.
It depends. It all depends on the person, because I feel like there's actors I've worked with where they just want the adjustment, and they don't really need anything else. And then there's other actors where they need to feel like they're doing a good job. They need that little extra encouragement to know that they're going in the right direction. So it all depends, and that's why what I was saying before, it's just like you're learning how you're collaborating with each person, and how you're communicating with them, because you're not communicating with everybody the same way.
Where does the writing process begin for you?
The writing process begins just with an idea, a lot of times for me, it's just thinking about a character and what they're up against, what they're trying to do, what they're looking for, and 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 just kind of having a concept or an idea in my head about it. Um, Usually, not every script starts the same. You always get a different idea. In a different way, but it always starts with a character and it starts with some sort of goal of what seems interesting or compelling to you. And then a lot of times what I like to do is write down some things about who I think this person is and then come up with an idea of an outline. Doesn't necessarily always happen this way, but generally, if there's some ideas of like, oh, this person could run up against this, or it could happen like this, and then there's this moment here, a lot of it, it's just always foggy, and you're thinking more, you're trying to find some more crystal clear images of like what this character could be doing, and then you just start writing. You don't have to start at page one. You can, something like what I like to do is like, oh, this idea of this scene that could be, I'll just start writing there and then start discover something about the character through that process. 9 times out of 10, all the stuff you start writing never ends up in the movie anyways, or never ends up in the final. A lot of times it's like you write all this stuff to create the character, to help you understand the character or understand something different or a different characters, and that was its purpose. And then you're like, oh, actually the movie is like this, needs to be this, and but you weren't going to get there unless you did all this other writing at first. So I never put any sort of pressure. I used to do this in the past, put pressure of like, oh, this is how the movie's going to start, and this is how it's going to go. I mean, you eventually do have to do that, or else you're just going to be writing pages and pages and pages for no good reason forever. But I do like to just explore first and see, because a lot of times when you're writing these scenes, things will come to you that you didn't even think about. And a lot of times the best things, you don't come up with them, they come to you when you're writing. And depending on how you're writing too, sometimes the character will just do something, will want to do something that will surprise you, and then you can explore that. It's a very like intuitive way of writing. You do that first, and then like later, I do that first, and then later I come back and then read the what was all this, and then you kind of put structure into it where you're like, oh, I can beginning, setup, builds, payoffs, things like that, and try to give it some structure that way, if that makes sense.
It does. How long will you take to, let's say you jot down ideas, and then at what point do you actually implement them into a screenplay?
Well, everything is different. I feel like it could just be just a few weeks of exploring. A lot of times, that's why I do like to write with other writers. I do like to write with a lot of writers, because then you have that accountability of, hey, let's put this into some structure. Okay, yeah, let's do that, and do it that way, because you're still exploring when you're doing it that way. When Greg and I wrote Don't Tell Larry, we spent a long time writing that script, but we spent a lot of time just like, we would meet up at the IHOP and get late night pancakes and coffee and just like write down all these different ideas of what we could do for the movie. Like, who could be Susan? What else could be happening to Larry? What are some ridiculous escalations? And that was like a different process. And eventually, I think we did that for probably too long, maybe for a few months. And then we're like, all right, let's buckle down and let's start writing. Like, we gave it a structure and, just a rough sketch of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, what those things could be, what we think they could be, and then write and just get to the end. Because it's all going to be crap anyways, and you just write till you get to the end and go back, reread it, and rewriting, because that's ultimately what you're doing when you're writing. Writing is just rewriting anyways, until someone either makes you be done, or your deadline makes you be done, or you're dead, so then you're done. So it's all a different variable. I joke with Greg sometimes that if we didn't have a start day of production, we'd still be writing Don't Tell Larry today. Right.
Just out of curiosity, did you get the purple Willy Wonka pancakes at IHOP?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No.
The gold flakes on top? Okay.
No, I didn't even know you could do that.
They had it for a while. Yeah, sorry. That was just, I just was picturing you guys like late night, sort of burning the midnight oil, writing.
No, I'm not fancy like that. I just got old school pancakes.
But you find that diner environment sort of lends to ideas, whereas maybe at home there's too many distractions, or wherever,
Well, it was just an in-between meeting place for Greg and I that was open. And so it just serviced a spot for us to meet at. IHOP, we would leave a good tip, so they wouldn't get angry at us being there for 2 or 3 hours,
right.
With our notebooks out, coming up with ideas. So I think that was the other reason why we did IHOP as well. I do like, for me personally, I do like showing up in the same spot to write. I feel like, going back to that idea of what was it? What was the word? What was the word we discovered?
Oh, routine routine?
Yeah, routine.
Okay.
Having the routine where you just show up to the same spot and you're like, oh, now I'm gonna write. It's like you're not like you have more energy for writing then, or you have more energy for doing the thing that you want to do when you just keep showing up at the same spot. I like to do that. And then if you feel like you're stuck or in writer's block hell or something like that, then you can pick up and go to the coffee shop or the IHOP or the beach or whatever. And the different environment will help you think differently as you're reading your script or kind of working some new things out for the scene. Sometimes I feel like personally, when I'm having trouble figuring something out in a screenplay, it's usually an issue with my character. I don't know my character well enough to come up with this aspect of the story. That's like, there's a lull here, and things should be getting worse for this person, but I don't know what it is that's really going to make things worse for this person, and so you got to figure out who that character is, and that's part of the writing process too. Is you're uncovering layers of the onion of like who that character is, because you have this idea of like, oh, here is this woman who wants to be a pilot. And she has to be a pilot because she won't get her inheritance. Okay. And she's afraid of flying. Okay. what else about her, that you need to come up with? There's different things about this character you have to discover based on, for 90 minutes, you got a lot to figure out on top of that. So, the process of how people, how this person does under conflict, what are those things? And a lot of times too, you're putting yourself into this character, and they're adopting things about you. And then other times they're like, no, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to be, or this is what I'm trying to do. And it's just all a discovery of why it's just something you discover while you're writing. And if you don't spend the hours and the time writing, you don't have the time to discover it. It's the same thing that happens when you're editing a movie. You have all this footage. You have a million ways you can cut this movie. You have all this footage. There's literally a million ways you can cut it. Not one editor is going to cut this, the same movie. They're going to make a different movie. Every writer is going to come up with a different character or story or whatever based on this idea that I just gave you. But for editing, you got to spend the hours and you got to spend the time putting the footage together, creating tone, time, pacing, finding the emotion, the emotional thread of it. And you have to do as a balance, as the amount of time that you're spending in the edit, you are in a way having to spend more time putting it on the page to have it there. I know he likes to say, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. So if it doesn't work in the script, if you haven't figured out something that works here, you're going to have a heck of a time making it work in the edit later, even if it's not the same thing. And the edit and the script are never the same thing. They never are. And maybe they are somewhere. I mean, I'd love to know where, but that having that blueprint in the script really does allow you to have the house that you're making in the edit, and and it's a reflection of that. And so you got to spend the time figuring out who your character is, or your characters are, not just the one, like all of them.
Well, you had said previously that so much of what you write may not even end up either in this final script or being shot. How often do you write just what you consider awful pages on purpose, like embarrassing pages, just to get sort of yourself going?
Like how many pages or how much time?
How much time do you sort of?
It could be weeks, months. A good example. Greg and I think we wrote over 20 drafts of Don't Tell Larry, and the first few drafts of Don't Tell Larry, we completely just threw them in the trash and just rewrote.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because it was like, this isn't working, but we've discovered some things about Susan, our main character, and Patrick. And I remember we discovered some things about the dynamic of this, like these two co-workers. So if we hadn't have written those pages, we wouldn't have understood the dynamic between the two of how they're friends. They have to work together, but they don't see things eye to eye. And now that they have to work really hard to keep this secret from Larry, it just makes it challenging for them to have to work together because the stakes are so high for them. But we needed to write those drafts in order to figure that out because we had no idea. We had no idea. And the only way to have an idea is just to take the plunge and write. There's people, my mother was an oil painter, and she would paint stuff, and if she didn't like it, she'd paint over it until she liked the painting that she was trying to do. She would always paint my dad's cabin that he had. and she would like go just paint over it, the thing she didn't like, until she found the thing that she was wanting to do in the painting. And writing is no different. The same thing for editing. I'll do the same thing. I'll edit this whole sequence, this whole scene. It could be 15 minutes and then 15 minutes long. And then as you're watching the movie, you're like, this 15 minutes is wrong. It needs to be different. And I think I know what to do now. I wouldn't have known unless I cut these 15 minutes to be this way. And so you got to go back and then recut it differently, find the different takes because of the performance, whatever it may be. Not because the performance is bad, but because the performance is giving the character a certain emotion or tone that doesn't quite work well for what we're trying to do as we're setting up, or as we're building, or as we're paying off an aspect in the movie or a plot point in the movie. So it's just being willing to just do so much work and being willing to feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over again. It's very difficult to always feel like you're always doing the same thing over and over again, but repetition is the mother of all skill. If you keep doing it over and over again, it will get better. You'll discover things about it. You'll discover things about yourself, you'll discover things about the character, and you'll discover things about your movie, and then you'll discover what is working, and you can do that again later on the next one. So you got to be willing to do the time. It's not just, I wrote it, it's done, by, come rent my movie,
Would you watch your mom paint a lot? Do you have memories of that?
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, I have memories of watching my mom paint. My sister paints, and when I was a kid, I did oil painting as well. I did an oil painting class for most of my life. I have a bunch of oil paintings at home that are just like leaned up against the wall. I was going to put them up, but I haven't done it yet. But I have a lot. The whole house was just filled with oil paintings that like my mom did, my sister did, and then I did. As a kid, because you could paint whatever you wanted to paint, I was obsessed with Star Wars, like any kid growing up in the 80s and 90s was. And so I painted a lot of, I think his name was Ralph McQuarrie, the concept artist for Star Wars. He had a bunch, I would do oil paintings of the Ralph McQuarrie concept art of like the Millennium Falcon and C-3PO and Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker fighting. And so I have all these ridiculous oil paintings of Star Wars stuff. I remember I did an oil painting of the Titanic because Titanic came out, and I remember I saw that 4 times in the theater. I'm willing to admit I loved Titanic. I haven't seen Titanic since, but I loved watching that movie. Talk about like hitting all the emotional beats right to make you really care what was happening. I watched that, I remember when I saw that movie for the first time, I forgot that the stupid boat sinks. I was like so caught up, and I was like, whoa, oh, that's right. Like, it was crazy. I know, this is coming from the guy who lost himself watching Henry and the Hendersons, would forget that the Titanic would hit an iceberg. Like, that's the whole point of the movie, that they have this love story revolving around this big historical event. But I did. I watched the movie, and I totally forgot that that boat hit the iceberg. And when it hit the iceberg, it was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, no. This is bad. This is bad for these characters. Right. Like I care.
Sure.
I care for these fake people. But that's like what cinema is about. That's what it's about. You care about these people. And it's not just that. It's just cinema. It's like that's theater. That's drama, And even in literature, it's like the things that you read. If you care about the character in the book, you're going to keep turning the page.
You just jogged my memory, just not to bring this up, but Seraphim. Have you seen about the painter? Oh, it's a French movie, Seraphim, and it's on Tubi, and it's really good.
You're
And
going to be surprised. I have not really watched any movies about painters. They're not interesting to me.
oh, you don't? Okay, because I love it. There was another one about a woman from Finland who was a painter, and her family was kind of using her to do her paintings. They were all kind of mooching off of her, sort of like almost like a modern day, like a Britney Spears type of situation.
Yeah,
So she was like forced to paint, and then she had these different like shady characters that wanted to sort of like own her paintings. So good. It was also on Tubi.
Oh man, I want to see that Britney Spears movie.
Yeah.
I want to. I'm just going to say it. I want to see the Britney Spears movie because, like, it's like the way everybody thought about her, and then now like uncovering the onion on that, where you're just like, whoa, wow. Not everything is what you think it is from the outside on the surface level. It's deeper. Everything goes deeper. There's something motivating that. And that's a good way of understanding just as you're writing your story too, where at the surface what's happening and then underneath what's happening and how is it reflecting that. I think that's like what any good mystery movie is. You know, on the outer workings, this is happening, but like Clute. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Clute. No. Oh man, Clute is awesome. Cinematography is awesome. It's Gordon Willis who shot The Godfather, and it's with Donald Sutherland, and I want to say Julie Christie, but I feel like every pretty lady that is in cinema in the 60s and 70s is Julie Christie. So I can't remember if it's for her in the movie, but it is. That's, you know, Donald Sutherland is investigating this thing, and what you think is on the outside is completely different on the inside. Just like The Conversation or The French Connection, those types of movies, you know. And I love those. I love those a lot. So I'm like, that Britney Spears movie would be great like that. Sure. I don't want to make it. I just want to watch it.
If you are interested in storytelling, you may also like our new book, Story Questions, the sponsor of today's video. It's a story tool that offers you over 1,500 story questions that you can use as story prompts. It's packed with over 40 categories, so whether you are in the brainstorming stages, developing characters, dialogue, or rewriting, it can help you at every stage of the writing process. Think about this statement. Most powerful stories are just great answers to strong questions. We've linked up to story questions in the information section below. Now back to the interview. How do you know your story is worthy of a page 1 rewrite?
I feel like that's a trick question because my instinct is to say when you hate it, but that's not true because Stephen King hated Carrie and he threw it in the trash and his wife had to pull it out. And that, you know, Carrie is awesome. So that's not the right answer. Not that there is a right answer in this scenario, but I feel like it's worthy of a page 1 rewrite if it's uninspiring to you, because I think you as a filmmaker or as a writer, you should be inspired about what you're doing. And you're not always going to be inspired. Like you're just going to be chasing the dragon if you're just going to keep getting dopamine hits when you're behind the keyboard typing away. Like that's not going to happen. But you got to hold on to what your first inspiration was that got you excited about writing the idea. If it's still orbiting what the catalyst was of why you wanted to write the story, then you shouldn't do a complete page 1 rewrite. I mean, you should probably get somebody you trust with suggestions. But at the same time, I think if your gut is telling you to do a page 1 rewrite, then you should do it.
Well, you talked about how the two of you, Greg, for Don't Tell Larry, you just threw many drafts away until you knew who these characters were. So you felt like there were things there that you were invested
Yeah,
in.
well, I think the writing, because like the writing was on the wall, I feel, in terms of like we need to do a page one rewrite. Part of the reason why too is, early on in Don't Tell Larry, we had the most ridiculous sequence ever where our main character, Susan, the opening is she gets this cake for her boss's farewell party because her boss is retiring, the CEO of this travel agency, and she wants the job. She's been working her whole life to get this CEO, to replace him as CEO at this travel agency. And so she picked out this perfect cake, and she goes outside. Her car gets towed. There's no taxi. She gets on one of those birds scooters, and she's like going down the street towards the docks, holding a cake and being on this like electric scooter, like unrealistic for us to even shoot this. And then when she gets there, the cruise ship is already off in Lake Superior. So she gets in a canoe and canoes towards the ship and then climbs up on a rope with this cake up the side of the ship, onto the deck of the boat and has the cake unscathed there. And Greg and I really liked that idea because we were always laughing when we were writing it and like, oh, what could be more ridiculous? It's just like also setting the tone because Don't Tell Larry is just this ridiculous dark comedy where we wanted to see all these like ridiculous things happen that we haven't seen in a movie before, so we wrote to see it. And but it was just insane that we were going to be able to do that sequence. So but what we discovered is how tenacious Susan is, how headstrong Susan is. And so we were then able to take some things that were being said, how she would talk to herself, things like that. And then we knew we were like, okay, let's take this, let's take this, let's take this. How are we really going to start this movie? Like, what's a more realistic way? As an independent filmmaker, you also got to be realistic of like how you're going to open up the movie too. Like, can you actually physically achieve shooting it as well? There was no way. Like, we needed to close down all those streets and to do all that stuff safely and everything. It was going to be, I'm just guessing, millions of dollars. It's the generic term, millions of dollars. We can't do it. But it was unrealistic. So, we were a very low budget movie. And so how are we going to take our limitations, turn that into strengths, where at the beginning of the movie we get an idea of who our character is, and we know she's tenacious, and she wants everything to go perfectly for her boss's retirement, so he can hand her the keys to the company and be like, "Here you go, Susan. Great job. I'm retiring, and you get the job, or you get the company." Atta girl, And so we discovered that by doing this ridiculous sequence. And that ridiculous sequence had been in the script for like drafts. And even when we like gave it to people to read, they're like, how in the heck are you going to shoot this? I don't know. At some point in the beginning, I never think about like, I'm not going to be able to shoot this. I'm just like, I want to see this. Like, you just get inspired. Like, don't give yourself too many limitations per se. And then eventually you got to come down and really brass tacks figure out like what is it that you're really going to be able to do, and based on money, because it's just it can be very expensive to make a movie, and so you got to figure out how you're going to execute those things, and So I think that's why Greg and I also did a lot of these page one rewrites, because we knew it was going to be unrealistic for us to shoot some of these sequences that we had written out. We needed to wake up and smell the roses or smell the coffee, however the saying goes. You know, it's funny, a long, long time ago, because I was such a Star Wars fan as a kid, I wanted there to be more Star Wars movies, and because Return of the Jedi, I forget, was like in 1986 or 7, or I forget what the time, it doesn't matter. It was just a lot older, and it was, you know, the mid-90s. And I remember thinking, like, you know what, I'm just gonna make my own Star Wars movie. I'm going to do that. And I bought a bunch of like models and stuff. And I remember I wrote a letter to George Lucas, to Lucasfilm. And basically, I mean, you know, kids say the darndest things. I was like, hey, Star Wars is really cool. You did a really good job with it. I don't know why you're not making any more of it, but since you're not, I'm making a Star Wars movie right now, and I thought you should know. And I sent it to Lucasfilm.
That's awesome.
And like the balls that this kid would have, but I just didn't know. But I was like, literally, I like went to the store, I bought Star Wars models, and I was gonna make all these models, and I was gonna shoot all this stuff, and with my friends, you know, I had this little Star Wars story that I was going to shoot that took place after Return of the Jedi, and I just wanted to see the story continue. You know, as a kid, I was like reading some of the books, and there's these books with stories that happen after. But as a kid, like, I don't know, you don't know about rights, you don't know about copyright or anything. But the coolest thing happened, I can't remember, it was probably, you know, months, it took a while, but I got this letter back from Lucasfilm.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't from George Lucas, but it was from George Lucas's secretary saying, George is really happy to hear that you're making your own Star Wars movie, and he wishes you the best of success, and knows it's going to be great. But it's like, but just a reminder, we have the rights, but you can totally make it and show it to your friends.
That's nice.
And so in here, you know, here's a token of appreciation. And I got this little like Rebel insignia pen and a Star Wars bookmarker.
Wow.
That came from George Lucas's office. And I was like, wow, that was really awesome. And I never finished the Star Wars movie because it was like really difficult with like, as a kid with the video camera and like all the models and everything. It was so much. And, but it did say, because I was giving him grief about not making any more Star Wars movies, and he was like, George is working on episodes 1, 2, and 3, you know, so he'll be working on his, and you can work on yours.
Very nice.
And I thought that was funny. So when it got really difficult doing all, because, you know, Star Wars is like all these incredible special effects. That's why, you know, it's the story and the special effects, and that's why, you know, that's why I really loved it. But as a kid, you're like, I can't do it. These things, they just look like models on strings. It's like they don't look as cool. But I'm like, well, George Lucas is making the other Star Wars movies, so we'll just wait, and I'll do something different, you know. So I never finished those Star Wars movies, and it was like way later, you know, until the episodes 1, 2, and 3 came out. But anyways, that was just it's something I did as a kid that was hilarious.
Do you still have that letter?
No. Well, I do. It's probably in a box somewhere. When you move around, you start losing things. So I know I always held on to that letter. I mean, I have a bunch of letters I've collected throughout the year. So they're probably somewhere in a manila folder somewhere.
That's pretty amazing. I would frame that.
But yeah, it's funny though, because years later, I went to the AFI Lifetime Achievement Award of George Lucas. I didn't get to meet him there, but at the after party, I saw him and I was going to go talk to him, but then he got swept away by Harrison Ford and George Lucas and Carrie Fisher. And I'm like, they probably have something else to do.
Sure.
So I never got to talk to him, but I don't know. I really admired George Lucas as a kid, reading about him. And, you know, he grew up in Modesto and I grew up in Lodi. So
Right.
he grew up nearby. So that was very inspiring to me of how, you know, and I watched all of his early films before Star Wars with American Graffiti and THX 1138 and found those movies to be really interesting as well. It was just really interesting. You know, I found his filmmaking interesting. I did.
And so being from a small town that was sort of nearby, you felt like if he can do it and have this kind of success,
yeah, for
why
sure.
can't I?
He went down, and I remember I went down to LA, and I was like, I'm going to go to USC because that's where George Lucas went, because like I read it in a book. Like that's what he did, so I'm going to go emulate that. And then, but I didn't. I ended up not going to USC because I read an article in Filmmaker magazine saying that film students at USC don't make a lot of movies. And I just was always shooting. I was making short films all the time, always constantly shooting. And so when I went down to go look at USC, you know, my mother was telling me about, like, oh, there's this other school. I drove by going down to Palm Springs called Azusa Pacific University. And she's like, maybe you should check that school out too. And I'm like, okay. So I went over there. And then I learned, you know, they just started a film program, but they said they had like an edit, they had Avid bays, they had a sound stage. They're like, if you come here, you can make movies, you can shoot all the time here. And I was like, oh, you can shoot all the time here, but I can't shoot all the time at USC. Perfect. So when I flew back home, and I got home, I took my USC application, I threw it in the trash, and then I was just like, I'm just gonna apply to APU. And Mom's like, why? Why don't you wanna go to USC? I'm like, well, they said I can just shoot all the time at APU, and I'd rather do that. So that's why I went to APU.
What is your approach to writing a great scene?
I don't know, you never sit there and think like this scene's gonna be great. I mean, sometimes you do. Actually, what usually happens is when you sit down to write a scene that's going to be great, it's not great. It's the complete opposite of great. It's something you kind of discover or you fall into. Usually, to me, I think a scene is great if there's a beginning, middle, and end. It escalates. There's like clear stakes. You're like interested in what's happening. Usually those types of things, they're happening in rewriting processes. Sometimes you get it at the first go, but not for me, at least, usually not. A lot of times too, when you reread a scene, after you've rewritten it, and it does inspire you, where you're like, oh, I love how this is like working out. That is a good sign. However, though, that also can be dangerous because a lot of times you can think, this is great, this is fantastic, I love this, and it doesn't make sense to anybody at all, and it doesn't even work. And I've had instances where I'm like, this is not good, this is not great, this is the opposite. And then I've had people say, these are the best pages you've ever written. So it's really hard to tell if you have something great. Sometimes, and I don't know, I think I'm learning this as I'm going along, is that you're about the work, and if you have the things you can check off in terms of, it's clear, external specific goals, things are escalating, there's no parts where you feel like in the script you're lost or there's a lull where you're bored or anything like that. Like it keeps your attention. You know, these types of tools that you have in your toolbox, you can check those off. You know, you stick to those. And if people are reading and you're getting good reactions out of it from people you trust, then you know you have something good. You know, and then it's tricky too, because from my experience, I've been very fortunate because I've written a lot that I've gone to shoot and put together. So if I might think to myself, oh, this scene is really not all that great. But then on set, it became great because the actors gave it life and you were able to shoot it in a way that gave it more life, and it ends up being, oh, this, I didn't even think this was going to be much. Like this was going to be like a small little moment in the movie, and now this is like a big thing that really helps you understand better about the character or the plot or the goal, and you discovered that later. So yeah, so I mean, that's not really anything concrete. You know, you thinking something is great can be a lie to yourself. Part of it, I think you just need to rely on your intuition. But if things are escalating and it makes you want to turn the page, that's actually great. That's really great. And if it does it for you, cool. If it does it for other people as well that you trust, all the better. Then actually that's great.
Do you obsess over every scene that you write, or is obsession not part of your process? You kind of just let things happen?
Well, yeah, I can obsess. I can definitely get obsessed. It's good to just let things naturally happen. It is really good to let that happen, and you're allowing the creative flow to happen. I think sometimes when you get obsessed about something, it's hard to see the pitfalls or find the pitfalls, and you can even be blind to major problems with your script because you're obsessed with the one thing. I think obsession is really great if you're obsessed about something, write into it, write it out, and then come back and then edit it and see how you feel. Like, does it still give you that obsession? Because sometimes your obsession will reveal things for the character or for the story or for a sequence or for whatever that gives part of that script life. But, you know, part of me thinks that being absolutely obsessed about this one aspect can sometimes be a hindrance of like being able to do a well-rounded story. But you know, it's never 100%. I mean, there could be there could be a situation where you being absolutely obsessed about that is working perfect for you. Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question, but I don't know. That's not really wisdom. That's like Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy.
Right. What a great skit that was. How do you decide if a scene is too long?
The one thing for me, I decide if I can figure out if a scene is too long if I suddenly kind of get bored in it. I think it's like an intuition thing. If you feel like that, I mean, now it's easy to be like, oh, am I checking my phone in this scene? I should like see where things kind of lull and where you lose your attention. Because here's the thing, you can have a 10-minute scene, that doesn't mean the scene is too long. If things are driving and there's an emotional thread through it and it's escalating where you don't know what's going to happen next and you're leaning in, and it's 10 minutes, that's great. That doesn't mean it's too long. It's working great. But if you have this like 2.5 minute scene where you can't remember it, or people are not remembering what happened in that scene that's critical, then it's too long. You should think about cutting it down. That's where to start, and then there could be other variables that spider out from that. But that's a good place to start.
When you said that about checking your phone, I'm not sure where I read this, but that some movies were being produced knowing that was basically the audience.
Yeah, and I that's true. That was an article I read about from a Netflix executive.
I think I read the same one, yeah.
Which I think is absolutely horrible. The phone should never be the first screen. The first screen should be the movie, and you need to write compelling and make something compelling enough where you forget that a phone even exists.
Right.
That's your job. Your job is not to... I used to work in reality TV, and I remember the notes from the network exec. It's like, oh, we get a lot of viewers of like people are at home cooking while the show is on because of the time slot. And I remember my boss was like, let's make this show so fun to watch that it's going to be really difficult to cook.
That's good. Okay.
And we were like, yeah, okay. And so we made over, the show was called Mystery Diners. It was on the Food Network.
Oh, great.
And we made over 100 episodes of that show. And literally, even though we got that information from the network, we were just like, no, let's make it hard for them to cook. Let's make this as fun and compelling to watch. It wasn't like, oh, we can put our foot on the brake. It means, no, let's tighten up the engine, let's put in the high octane, and let's put this baby in fifth gear, and let's make some fun TV. Let's do it. And I think that's your attitude. You're making entertainment. You got to make something compelling. I know Martin Scorsese's not sitting there thinking, well, the phone's the first screen now, so I guess I'll make this movie, kinda. I mean, he's not going to do that. And I don't think you should either, and I don't think Netflix should do it either. They're not going to listen to me. They don't care what I have to say. It's not a problem. But that's not a reason. It's not a reason. It's an excuse. That's my opinion. The other day, I watched a few movies. Which it was funny. I watched Krzysztof Kieslowski's Blue, held my attention all the way through. I didn't check my phone. The day before, I watched Empire Strikes Back. I hadn't seen that movie in a long time. Didn't check my phone. A few days before that, I watched The Big Lebowski. Did I check my phone? No. No, I didn't. But I forget, there was like a new movie I watched. I forget what it was, but I'm already forgetting what it was, and I checked my phone.
Interesting.
Another movie I watched with my son, we watched How to Train Your Dragon. Did I check my phone during How to Train Your Dragon? No, that was great. It was good. That's what we're doing. That's what we're supposed to do. What would be cool is if I could interact with the movie with my phone in some interactive experience that makes me, what am I trying to say? Like makes me explore the world more. Like imagine in John Wick with your phone, you could like go down another hallway and see something, another crazy story. I don't know. I guess they call that virtual reality, so it exists.
Sure, or a horror film where someone's alone at home and the phone rings. And then your phone rings in the theater.
Oh,
that would be great.
That would be. Oh, you know what movie that would be awesome and both horrible to do? that with is The Ring. I don't know if you remember that movie, The Ring. That horror film was very impactful for me, where this girl comes out of the screen after 7 days. I remember that made that white TV snow and the most scariest thing you could experience for about a month, and especially too being a film student and working with like tube TVs. So when like the VCR would shut off, the TV would just go. That scared me half to death. So if you could create that experience on top, like with someone's phone in the movie theater or at home, that would be great.
Right, right. Like with a QR code, and then it has like your phone for hopefully just a little while.
Yeah, or something.
Hopefully, yeah.
But not like this is the first thing you're looking at and that is the second thing.
Sure.
It doesn't make any sense. And if you're gonna just do this, just don't have a TV
And don't go to the movies.
and don't watch movies. Just don't do it.
Why did your mom give you the book Where the Wind Blows?
Why? She thought it would make a good movie. I was home visiting, and I wasn't quite sure. This was a long time ago. I was finishing a project early on. I was just kind of done with school. And my mom, she told me, she's like, oh, Caroline Fife wrote a new book. And she said, it's really good. You should read it. You should turn it into a movie. And she gave me the book. And when I saw it, I was like, I don't want to read this, because it's a romance Western novel, and I don't read romance novels at all. And so I'm like, okay, and I put it in my bag, and later, I didn't read it right away, but it was later I read the book, and it was a great read. It was really fun. I liked the characters, I liked the story, I liked everything about it. And so much so, I wanted to turn it into a movie. So I optioned the book, and my friend Mike Madden and we wrote the first script. And then I shopped it around, and then nobody wanted to buy it. And so I put it on the shelf, and it wasn't until many, many years later, I met Ashley Elaine, who was from the Mayberry Man movie and series, and she was looking for something else to produce, and she asked me if I had anything, and I was coming off of Don't Tell Larry. I have like this Bigfoot script. I like doing horror thrillers. And she's like, oh, I want to do like a family-friendly movie. And I was like, I don't have any of those, Ashley. I don't know. And then I thought about it. I'm like, oh, I have Where the Wind Blows. I'm like, I have one script maybe you'll like. And I sent it to her. And it wasn't until a year later after that, I ran into Ashley, and she said, she's like, I just read Where the Wind Blows. I love it. I want to do it. Let's do it. And we started shooting the movie like 4 months or 5 months after that. It was immediately. It was pretty quick.
And where did you film it? It was so beautiful, the shots that I saw.
We shot the film up in Montana, up in northwest Montana in an area called St. Ignatius, and then we also shot near Yellowstone in this western town called the Yellowstone Film Ranch, which is this cool old western town that has these Montana mountains as a backdrop. It's kind of like in the middle of nowhere, and it's beautiful. You can just like point the camera in any direction, and it looks beautiful out there.
So what was the first step in getting this made? You optioned the book, the rights to it. How did that happen?
What happened in the beginning, there was a publishing company in New York who owned the filming rights to the book. And so when I talked to Caroline Fife about optioning it, she's like, oh, I'd love to have this book be turned into a movie. I'd love for you to do it. She's like, but I don't own the filming rights. So I had to call up the publisher and get the option for the book for like maybe 6 months or 12 months so I could write it and pitch it. And I convinced him to give it to me for a very, very low fee, which I won't disclose, but it was tiny. And my argument to him was, I told him, I just finished AFI. I'm a young, hungry filmmaker. I'm going to spend more energy trying to get this movie made than anybody else, than Hallmark or whoever else might be interested in turning this book into a movie. And he said, okay, you know what? I'll help you out. He's like, good luck. I'm like, thank you. So, but years went by and it expired. And I told Caroline, I said, if you ever have to renegotiate your contract with this publishing company, I said, get your film rights back. And she did. And so we had to get the film rights through Caroline because she had them. And she was very happy that we were going to do the movie, so she worked with us to get the film rights to get the movie made.
At what point did you decide, I think this is time to make the movie? You said you met this one actress?
Oh, it was Ashley read the script and she was like, I want to make this. Let's do it. How soon can we shoot this? And it had been 8 years or 9 years. It had been a very long time. And when I read the script was 150 pages, the screenplay. And our budget was very low. So I'm like, we cannot shoot 150 pages in 18 or 19 days with the budget that, she wanted to make the movie with. I'm like, I got to rewrite this. So I rewrote the script to be 110 pages. So there's like a lot of elements from the story that I had to remove. And I was just focusing more on just the relationship, the romance aspect of the book to be a movie. And so we got it down to 110 pages.
And I'm curious, someone who loves horror and Star Wars, why this romance book?
Well, it was fun because a good story is a good story and good characters are good characters. It shouldn't, genre doesn't dictate what a good story is. If you have a good story and it happens to be a romance story, then it's good. So it was and for me, I just thought it as a great exercise to be outside of your comfort zone because I'd never done any sort of like romance. It's interesting though, because to me, I think a really good, there's a lot of like rom-com movies I don't mind watching, like Romancing the Stone, Night and Day, Overboard.
Yeah.
In those types of movies, the conflict is the man and woman are in conflict with each other, and it's like resolved at the end when they can finally acquiesce to each other's attraction and love for one another. And through the experience of the story, they're always arguing and fighting and everything. And I think that's very entertaining. Empire Strikes Back is half a rom-com as well, between Han Solo and Princess Leia. And they're always yelling at each other. And then before he gets frozen, she's like, I love you, I know. And it's like, it's great. So I was down to do Where the Wind Blows. I knew it was going to be very, very challenging just because of the budget. It's a Western. We should have had a bigger budget, but I was up for the challenge. And I love Westerns. I remember at a very early age, sitting on my dad's lap and watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That was the very first Western I ever saw in my life. And I remember loving that movie so much. And I have a lot of other action Western scripts that I've written that I've tried to get made and have failed in doing so. So the fact that I had the opportunity to just actually make a Western I couldn't turn it down. But as I was adapting the material, the one thing I did do, I wanted to lean in. I wanted to make a movie that wasn't just going to be entertaining for women. I wanted it to be equally entertaining for men as well. So I zhuzhed up some action sequences and things like that to be in the movie. There's like suspense, thriller elements in the movie as well that are thrilling. Like there is like this John Schimke's obsession with like dark thriller type movies. It's there. There is a sequence in the movie where you're like, oh, that's intense. And people in our test screenings, people have loved it. And so this is like a thrilling, there's some thrill to this romance story. So that was a good exercise. That was a good challenge. I'm very happy with the way the movie turned out, and I know people are gonna love it when they watch it. It's surprising to me, the men in the test audience are always like, wow, I really like this movie. I wasn't expecting to like it, but it's really fun. I really like it.
Did you do research and sort of look at the temperament of others within this genre? Because it's such a mass library, whether it's Hallmark Channel or whatever. There's so much. I'll do that, and just to play it and just kind of soak it in, just to see what it's like, the worlds they create.
Yeah, so yes, I watched a bunch. It was really interesting because we cast Trevor Donovan to play Chase Logan in the film. And Trevor is like a rom-com king. He's been in so many Hallmark rom-coms, and he's been in some GAC rom-coms and stuff. And so I did my homework and I watched a bunch of his movies. And I saw like kind of what made them tick, and also, you know, those types of movies aren't really all that interesting to me. I know people absolutely love them and they eat them up, and I think that's great. But for me, I was like, we're not making this. And our story didn't really fit any of those. So when Trevor read the script and when we were talking before he signed on, he's like, I like this script because it's a little different than, he's like, it still has that romance element, which I really like, but it's a little different than what I normally do. Watching all these other films like Romancing the Stone, and even like the romance aspect of Indiana Jones, you know, I love that too. I mean, of course, I'm a dude. I'm gonna like the romance in Star Wars and Romancing the Stone and Indiana Jones. Like, that's a real romance movie. But I love movies like Sense and Sensibility, Emma, and Pride and Prejudice. And Little Women, the Greta Gerwig Little Women, that movie came out. I went and saw it with my family, and I loved Little Women. That story, I just was compelled all the way through. It's like a great story. She made a great movie. And I'm like, me, a man, like a movie called Little Women. Anything is possible if you set out to do it. And so for Where the Wind Blows, it's like, I'm gonna make this story, I'm gonna make this romance Western. The romance is gonna be great, the action's gonna be great, the thrill is gonna be great, and everything in between, the sandwich, everything else. I'm gonna do my best to make something that's gonna be fun to watch. And I feel like I did it, to the best of my ability, you know.
And do both characters drive the story, or is it more centered around one character?
No, they definitely both. And the book, what's really interesting is the book starts with Chase knocking on Jesse Strong's cabin door. And what Mike and I did early on, we decided, because he's delivering the message that her husband is dead and she's now a widow. And what we decided to do is we wrote this intro. The cold open of the movie is how her husband dies. And, you know, Chase and her husband, his name's Nathan, they drive cattle from Montana to Texas. That's what they do in the story. That's the backstory. And so the movie starts where they're coming off of that, and they go into this saloon, and all these things happen, and it results in Nathan's death. And we go with Chase as he travels out to deliver the message. And then as those two characters are together, we start to unlayer the onion a little bit more with Jesse, a little bit more. And then, and you know, and in these scenes, a lot of the scenes are between the two. And so you start to discover different things. And what ends up ultimately, not ultimately, but in the beginning, he finds out that she is going to, her and Nathan were going to adopt a little girl. But now that Nathan's dead, she's not going to be able to keep the little girl. So she asked him, she's like, they're going to be here any day. Can you just pretend to be my husband so I can keep this little girl? Then I don't have to be alone out here. And he, you know, reluctantly does it. I'm not giving anything away. It's in the trailer. It's in the beginning of the movie. But all those things of them pretending to be married to, you know, just for a few days, there's just a lot of fun sexual tension that transpires through the story that make it great.
And what year does this take place?
1886.
Okay, interesting. And it's supposed to be in Montana? Is that where?
Yeah, it's technically supposed to be in Wyoming, but we shot in Montana. I had some connections out there in Montana to shoot, and so it all kind of worked out. And then there was like a little studio there, and Richard Davenport, who co-owns this studio called Treasure State Studios, they converted these big warehouses into sound stages. And so what we did is we built this log cabin out on this property out in Montana, and then we built the interior set in their sound stage, and we could fly out the walls because a lot of the movie takes place inside this cabin and outside the cabin. So in order to make it more visually dynamic, like I was thinking about movies like 12 Angry Men and Repulsion, where, you know, everything takes place in this room or the apartment, using as time would permit, like creative ways to shooting and blocking the movie where we could fly out the walls and things like that. So we had the set where part of the wall could fly out over here, it would roll out on wheels. And we could put the camera all the way over here and shoot this scene in a different way. And then we could put the wall back, and this wall would fly out here. And then we would do blocking with the camera, you know, with the camera over in this direction, looking that way. So we could creatively, because a lot of the movie takes place in the cabin, we were able to try to be as creative as possible with lighting, camera, and blocking. But we could do it cheaply up in Montana. I live in Los Angeles and I can't shoot here, and I'm not the only one. I mean, it's been in the news. If you're on the internet, you can see how hard it is. And I know California is trying to pass that bill, and even if they do, independent filmmakers like me, we're not getting any of that money to make our movie.
What made you think that the only way you were going to get Don't Tell Larry made was if you made it yourself?
Well, it was pretty easy to come to that conclusion because we had pitched Don't Tell Larry to a lot of people, and nobody wanted to make it. It was a dark comedy, so it's like, it's risky, or we didn't have a big name attached to it. So Greg and I were just like sick and tired of asking permission to make the movie, and we needed to take matters into our own hands and just make it. We believed in the movie, and so we were willing to put our own money into it to get it started, and then ask everyone we know to raise money to make it, and make it ourselves. But we first tried to pitch it around. We pitched it around. It was first like a TV show, and then nobody wanted to do the TV show, even though there was some interest. And we eventually, wrote the feature script, and then pitched that around as well, and just no bites, no bites, or just being scared. It wasn't a guaranteed hit, whatever that means. But so we decided just to make it ourselves. Some of the best movies, well, I'm saying like Don't Tell Larry is the best movie. I'm proud of the movie, but I'm just saying, you know, even George Lucas with Empire Strikes Back, he made that himself. He financed that himself. That was not a studio financed movie. I mean, there's like I just learned this a little while ago. There was all sorts of drama behind, you know, the studio head who greenlit the movie and everything else. But, you know, that was it was independently financed. It's like if you believe in something enough, you got to be willing to take the risk yourself to do it, whatever that means, how you do it. You know, because Don't Tell Larry's is such a weird, it's a dark comedy. It's not like dark comedies are out there making money. You know, it's not a romance movie. It's not an action movie. It's not a Marvel movie. It's not a horror movie. I mean, that's the thing we realized. If it was just a horror, you know, and I think there was a company too they suggested if you just make this more of a horror script, we would be interested if it was more of like a horror comedy. And we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to make a horror comedy. We wanted to make a dark comedy movie, a thriller comedy is what we wanted to do. And we wanted it to start as a comedy and it slowly morph into this dark thriller comedy-like movie. That's what we wanted to do. And people told us it wasn't going to work. It was going to be too hard. We knew it was going to be hard. But sometimes if nobody else is going to believe into your project, do you believe in it? And yes, we did believe in it. And that's why we decided to just raise the money ourselves. It took us forever to do it, but we did it.
Do you remember sort of that exasperating moment where maybe it was like the final email or no that you heard?
Well, yeah, it's actually quite dramatic for me, that moment. What had happened is my father had passed away. And after that, I remember talking to Greg and just being like, I'm sick and tired of waiting for people to give us permission. Like, life's too short. We should I just want to make it. Let's just do it. I'm sick and tired of waiting. So that was my catalyst. And Greg was like, let's do it. He was down. So that was the catalyst for me. And that, you know, that too, it's like I knew too, it's just like, I inherited a little money, not a lot, but I was like, I'm just going to take this and put it into Larry. Life is too short. My dad lived to be 102 years old. He was very old. Like nothing was robbed from him at all. But even him being so old, it was just so clear that life is too short. And so I was like, I just don't want to, like, I'm done waiting. I'm just done waiting. And I was working on Red Table Talk. I had this like really great job. And that was just like going and going and going. And I was like, life's too short. I'm making this movie. Like, let's do it. And so I took time off from Red Table Talk to go make the movie. But when I got done, I was able to come back to the job. Like they had an open seat for me, which was really nice of them. It only lasted for one season because then the show was over after that. But it was a risk. It's always a risk. Making movies is a risk, and you got to be willing to do the risk yourself, especially as an independent filmmaker. If you want to prove yourself, if you want to make something, and if you want something to be made a certain way, you got to be willing to do it yourself if nobody else is going to do it. If no one's going to believe it. And not that nobody believed in Greg and I. We had a lot of people out there who believed in us and who still helped us along the way. It was just like the people who could write checks, you know, for bigger production companies and studios and things like that. They weren't going to write the checks for us. So
it's interesting too, because your dad was the reason you love story, listening to him tell these stories and how he held people sort of captivated, and then to have that be the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, where you're like, then I have to do this.
Yeah, very much so. And it's like, I think my dad would probably be very happy knowing that I just took that money and I just dumped it into making a movie. I think he would have been very happy to know that's what I did with the money. And I'm glad, and I'm thankful. I am actually really thankful for that event, the way everything happened. I've wanted to be a filmmaker for so long, and life gets in the way. I've been editing a lot of TV shows, and especially too, I was working on Red Table Talk. We won an Emmy for Best Informative Talk Show. And you're working at Will Smith's production company, and you're like, "Hey, I've come a long way."
Yeah.
But it was obvious to me, not to anybody else, because this is something for me. As a child, I wanted to make movies. As a kid, I wanted to make movies. When I was in college, I was making movies, shorts and things like that. I just always wanted to make movies. And then you have this life event where someone you love finally passes away. I mean, it's no secret to anyone. We all got to die at some point. But when it finally happens, it's like it does, like something synthesizes inside of you, something about time, and then what's really at stake for you, what's really important for you. And so I'm thankful for that, because it was the catalyst for me to be like, all right, I'm done waiting. Let's put it in drive. Let's go. It's funny though, I forgot that was a catalyst. We've been talking about my dad for so long here. He was, I feel like it's part of him, taught me how to be a good storyteller. He didn't sit me down and be like, "Hey John, this is how you tell stories." It's just from observation. But it's just interesting, like that ending was a new beginning of my path to becoming a feature film maker, and it's crazy too, because I made Larry. We premiered at the Austin Film Festival. Ashley saw the film at the Austin Film Festival, and that's when she was like, "Oh my gosh, that's right. John gave me that romance western script and I didn't read it yet." And she read it, and then it was like just after that I had talked to her, and she's like, "I want to make this movie next year." And it was like Christmas. So it's just interesting how that waterfall, the dominoes just fall. So, I know a lot of people like to say there's these quotes that say, 90% or 80% or 99% of success is showing up. It's true. If you show up and do the thing, you are creating opportunity for yourself. You don't know how you're doing it, but if you just show up and do it all the time, then you're allowing possibilities to happen for you. At least that's what I believe.
We've known other people whose parents have died, and they did the same thing. It was very important to them.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's just, death is always a catalyst. In movies, death is a catalyst, too.
Right.
I think it's like it's a universal thing. It's a universal thing. So it just happened to me. It did. It kind of kicked me in the butt. It's the last kick in the butt I got from my dad to get things in gear. So
how did you say, okay, well, we have money to start? What was like the first step that you took, knowing that you two were going to be the engine, you and Greg?
Well, originally, I know Greg and we were trying to raise more money. We had a certain set budget, but when we realized we squeezed the juice that we could possibly squeeze out of everybody that we knew, we had this smaller budget instead. But we were very detail oriented, and we did a preliminary budget ourselves. We knew a lot of like different indie producers, line producers, things like that. So we got a template and we went through, and Greg and I had done a lot of web series together in the past. So we have put together small budgets before. And so we gave ourselves a certain amount of days. We knew we wanted to spend a little bit of money to get somebody recognizable, like we have Ed Begley Jr. in our movie. And so we set a side budget for him and for Dot Marie Jones. And, we knew I had a casting director we could work with, Ricky Maslar. She liked the script and she was willing to help us get the script in front of some named talent that would be willing to sign on and we could pay them later while we were raising money. And so that's what we did, though. We put that first budget together, and then we took trips. Well, we live in Los Angeles, so we just looked around Los Angeles for locations where we could shoot. And then when it was obvious we couldn't afford to shoot here, I had a friend who suggested maybe you shoot in Texas. I know an independent producer out there who could probably help you. We talked to him. He's like, yeah, if you come out here, I can help you with crew and cast. There's an infrastructure here in Dallas. You can come and I can connect you with. So Greg and I flew out to Dallas and we just started looking at different locations and met with people, and we're like, yeah, we can do it here. And then we started to find locations and get hard numbers on that, and we started cutting days and things like that. So we did work on the budget while we were casting at the same time. That's what we did. That's what we had done for our next step after we had raised our money.
And you factored in that you could edit the movie, which saved
Yeah, for $0, I could cut the movie, like no problem there. And we paid, I had a friend, a lot of it, what we called was beg, borrowing, or stealing. And so, I had a friend who I knew it's like if we gave him $1,500, he could be the assistant editor. So while we were shooting, we could be sending him the footage and he could be building the Avid project together. So when I got back from Texas, like the Avid project was built and we could like start editing. And then I had done the online process. Like after it's done, I could deliver the audio stems to the audio post house and then deliver the video online media decomposed sequence to the post house for color. And the funny thing is our colorist, he color graded the movie for free. In fact, he was an investor. He invested a little money into the movie, and then he was like, "I'm going to color grade the movie for no money." And so, and we used the facility where he worked, and we made it. They were very nice to us, and it was like, hey, if he's gonna color grade it for free, like we won't charge you for the space. But I was in there doing all the online tedious work and things like that. So that was part of the beg, borrowing, stealing. We knew that was going to happen. And our cinematographer, Derek Bauer, he loved the script. I met him through another movie that I was working on. And I told him about the script, and he read it, and he's like, I love this script. I want to do it. I'm like, great, I can't pay your rate. And he's like, great, what can you pay me? We can pay you this. Okay, I'll do it. And so just that's kind of what those next steps were, was just trying to find people who were willing to work with us for lower money. And and that took, some of it took a lot of time, and other was like things just fell into place, like it was just kismet. It was meant to be that these people wanted to work on the project, and that was a compass. Greg and I knew that the right people to work with on this movie for such a low budget were the people who wanted to work on it.
So far, what has making this film taught you? That if you go to your next project, you will make sure to either do more of or do less of?
Oh, wow. There's a lot of stuff that I've learned. I like to call those things like start, stop, and continue. Like, what do you need to start doing? What do you need to stop doing? And what you can continue to do based from project to project. I think the one thing that I really learned a lot from making Don't Tell Larry is you want to continue to keep finding some, like putting money aside to pay recognizable talent to be in your movie. Because I think the one thing is like once the movie was done, like when people can start recognizing people in your movie, it's easier to get people who want to distribute your movie. And that's a whole other thing, is finding the right distributor for your movie, because I mean, in my opinion, that there's not a lot of distributors that are great to work with. I feel like we teamed up with a fantastic distributor, and I like our distributor very much so. But we talked to a lot of people where I was just like, there's no way we're giving these people our movie. There's no, I've worked way too hard to let these people release it. So, but what did I learn? I mean, a lot. I think the one thing I learned is don't be afraid to do the thing you want to do, and that it's always going to be risky. You're never going to feel comfortable doing it. And if you ever feel comfortable doing it, then you're doing something wrong. And so that's a great compass, that it's going to be challenging. There's always going to be challenging aspects. There's things I've also learned, like people I won't work with and people who I want to continue to work with. And then there's also, oh, we definitely need to hire somebody to work with to do this unique thing. You know, and I think a good example too is like making a movie, you always want an art director / production designer. You want somebody to help visualize your movie with like the props and help come up to like, you know, a lot of times you're not building sets, but you're transforming sets. And I know a lot of time in the past, I've never did not have a lot of production designers or art directors. You would do that yourself. Like, oh yeah, I'll go get and Greg and I many times had go to Target because we got people's sides and we're like, oh, here's a red shirt that they can wear, or here's the thing. Like it's better to have somebody else that sees your vision, that's gonna help you make your vision come to life, come to into fruition. And because it's gonna be 10 times better to have someone like that. So you wanna like just have a budget for it and raise the money to do it, so you can have that person for it. Because especially for Don't Tell Larry, there was like a lot of little props and knickknacks and this and that that's like set up here, build here to pay off later for people to keep track of and to help materialize. And there was no way Greg and I could have done that on our own. So it was like fantastic to have that production designer and / art director. If you have more money, you would have two separate, but a lot of times they wear the same hat. But it's, you know, independent film, like you're always wearing a lot of hats anyway.
I think just one last question here, and you've been, I don't know how you're doing it, because you're just, it's like you're just going.
You know, this is inspiring to me because I don't necessarily sit down and talk with people about this at all. I really don't. I feel like I've learned a lot through experience, and I feel like filmmaking is a practice. It's not like you've arrived and now you're the filmmaker and you know everything what to do. You don't. It's like being a doctor. Like they call doctors their practice, where they learn more about medicine and how people behave and how people get sick or whatever. They call it a practice. I feel it's the same thing as being a filmmaker. You're always learning and you're practicing. You learn new things. You try that and you learn from there. You're always learning as you're going. So in a way, this is making me think about things that I've learned, things that I would do, or things that I would, you know, if I had any advice, tell to other people who are looking to get into this like wild, crazy business it's crazy to get into it, but it's nice to hear somebody give you some sense of like from their experience, because no one is ever going to have the same experience. You're not going to have the same experience as me, and I'm not going to have the same experience as somebody else. It's crazy. It's like it's that wide open of like what can happen to somebody here.
What makes it crazy?
You know, what makes it crazy is that it costs a lot of money to make a film, and all these films don't seem to make a lot of money at all. It always seems like a handful of movies only make money, even though that's not true. I think a lot of low-budget films, I know a lot of people have made a lot of low-budget films that have made money, but it's crazy too because this business attracts so many egos as well. And it's like entertainment and it's visual, and you have not just movie stars, there's other people who have egos as well, whether it's like composers or cinematographers or the boom guy, or, and you meet crazy people too. And it just attracts all sorts of crazy people. I'm only saying this because I'm crazy and I've been attracted to do this. So I have the license to say this. But it just attracts, accounting attracts accounting type people. Being a lawyer attracts lawyer type people. Entertainment attracts entertainment type of people who love attention. And there's nothing wrong with wanting attention, but it's just a lot of egos. And listen, all the people that I've worked with, I've had a really great time working with, especially for like Don't Tell Larry and Where the Wind Blows. Everybody's been like creatively really fantastic to work with, and I'll work with them again. Same DP, Derek Bauer, from Don't Tell Larry to Where the Wind Blows, same guy, and I would work with him again in the heartbeat. Jason and Nolan Livesey, they wrote the music, both movies. They're going to score the third one if they'll still work with me. So. Oh, I forgot the question.
No, you answered it. I just said what makes it crazy, and you gave me a wonderful answer.
And this is the other thing that makes it crazy too, because you have to show up on a day, like you have a scene, you show up and you're like, okay, we're gonna shoot scene 23, 47, 68, and 72 if we're lucky. And that is 12 pages, and there's all these things that go on, and all these things have to be linked up or in sync and be ready, and you got to rehearse, you got to block, you got to light, you got to rehearse, and then you shoot, and then you got to do it again, and you just repeat it. You do it over and over and over again. And it's just chaotic. And then if you're outside, whether it's raining or you got animals or you got children, it's unpredictable. You're wanting something specifically to happen in a script that is very predictable, but you are in an environment that is absolutely unpredictable, and you're trying to make the predictable happen. And that's just insane in itself, just as an idea, as a concept to do. So yeah, that's why it's crazy.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to make movies? Independent movies, maybe they want to work up to studio level, but right now they have many stories they want to tell at the independent level.
I would say just do it. I mean, just write the script and just make it and start. It's easy to get a camera, shoot it on your iPhone and just cut it together and let it be. If you haven't done it before, do like a 5-minute story. Those are the hardest. And even now you have the opportunity with Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, you can make a little 2-minute, 4-minute funny short film that a lot of people can see. But just start doing it yourself, and then start meeting other people who have the same interest. Whether, if somebody, somebody who's like making music, get them to maybe make music for the thing that you're doing. Or if you know someone who, has something unique or special that's interesting to you that you think could be a movie, team up with them and learn how to collaborate with other people. Because it's one thing, you can do it yourself, yes, but in order to be a filmmaker, you have to collaborate with so many different people. And so find like-minded people that have the same interest in you and the thing that you're doing right then and there that you're inspired by, and just go and do it. Don't ask permission, ask for forgiveness.
And you do some DJing, or you have in the past?
Yeah, I have DJ parties. Yes.
Okay. Is that similar, sorry, to filmmaking? Is there a
Yeah,
similarity? Okay.
it is. I mean, for fun, I do make music. I have a good friend that I make music with. We used to throw parties in downtown LA. You know, when you're doing things like that, what I really like about music is it's kind of like an instant. In the same way, I think some of the music that I make that we've made together is in a way cinematic. There's always like a story behind it and stuff. So, but it's so instantaneous because when you're making music, you can find a sample and I have a bunch of keyboards at home I can hook up to my computer and I can make music with. It's more instant. Like if you have a sound and it could do this, it could do this. Like in one day, you can like create this whole track that you could like upload and people could listen to, or you can listen to it in your car. I mean, I like to make a lot of music. I just listen in the car myself because, you know, I just like make things that I like to listen to. But a movie, it's like you write the script and then months, maybe years later, you shoot it. And then months and a year later, you edit it. And then months to a year later, you finally get it up on a screen. And then you're like, oh, people like it. That worked out. It's a marathon. And when you make music, it's just a quick sprint. So that's why I enjoy making music. I come from a musical family. Everybody like plays piano and instruments and stuff like that. So I learned playing the piano as a little boy, and it's just kind of been part of my life of just like what I like doing for fun. But if you're interested in the music, some of the music that I've made, just go and look up Chuck Styles is what it's called. And it's my buddy Francisco Ortiz and me. And actually Francisco, he's a colorist as well. And he did the color grading for Where the Wind Blows and for Don't Tell Larry. So we've been friends for a long time. We've met through working on TV. And we always just made music together. That was something we found that we like to do. And yeah. So that was a tangent.
No, but I saw like some pictures on your Instagram of you behind like a DJ table.
Yeah, I've done a lot. Yeah, like I said, I did a lot of DJ parties. I've DJ'd a lot of weddings and stuff. Wow. It's funny too because when I was in Montana shooting Where the Wind Blows, my niece was getting married in Portland, Oregon. And there was no way I was going to make it to that wedding, but she wanted me to DJ the wedding, like the dancing with all, you know, just all the DJing for all the dance music and stuff. So what I did one night in Montana, because we were getting ready to shoot and I couldn't leave because there was so much going on, I just DJ'd a mix for 2 hours and recorded it. And then I sent it to them and then they all danced to that 2-hour mix at the wedding that I made. So I love dance music. I love music. Music is transcendent as well. You know, the thing about being an editor, music has tempo. It has a lot of things about it that also is unique because you take music and you take an image and you put it together and based on like how it's sequenced or the order of it, it tells a story and it also creates a feeling. And so experimenting with just music and images is the fundamentals of what cinematic editing can be. And so I think when I was a kid, I would make all these little short films with in-camera edits because I didn't have any editing computer. Non-linear editing wasn't really a thing, so I would just have a camcorder and I would just do the editing, like run this way and I hit stop and then I would do the next setup, okay, keep running, and then I'd hit record where I think it would pick up, so when you played the tape back, it would, you know, you would see the edit. And then they would be silent films, and then I would take that film from VCR to another VCR, and then I'd go to the neighbors and I would borrow their VCR, And so I could do the playback, and then from the CD player, I would then put the RCA into the VCR, and then I would like go whatever, whether it was like whatever song, Madonna or whatever. I mean, I listen to a lot of like old school techno trance music, so I would take a lot of that I had and would play it to run it on top of the video underneath, I mean, on the VCR. So that was like my early discovery in that, but it's like because of learning music and loving music and everything, it's like you can play with those things together. You can make really cool things with it. I mean, and even it's like, 2001, A Space Odyssey, that, it's like this is one of the biggest cinematic moments of cinematic history. There are no words. It is images, it is music, that's all it is, and it's cinematic. So, and that's cinematic to me, and I love that. So, music is a part of my life, and having that. That's why I always think about that when I make music. I'm just rambling at this point, but the two go hand in hand. So I feel like editing and making films, if you have any musical bone in your body, you just, if you love making music, you keep making it. And there's something there you can pull from to make something that nobody else can make, but you.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.